You can't have good Trinidadian cuisine without some nice hot peppers. Now, jalapeños might not be the hottest pepper, especially for the Trinidadian who is accustomed with scorpion pepper and really hot peppers, but they do add amazing flavor, especially if you use them as a garnish on your pizza. Some people even put them in salads, and they really do add extra nice flavor to your food. So we're going to be talking all about them today. Hello everyone, this is Dylan from the Trinity Gardener channel, and I'm really excited for this video because we're going to be talking all about growing your own jalapeños in a container at home, 100% organic, and of course affordable. We're going to start off with containers. Now I'm going to be using one of these standard construction buckets, which is pretty much a 2.5 gallon bucket, right, for my container. If you don't have one that size, you can go as low as a 1 gallon bucket. It's not going to necessarily hurt your plants to go this small. It's just that your plants are going to have a little less room to actually grow and sustain themselves. Because of the fact that peppers are a perennial plant, and they can actually come back year after year and keep producing over the course of a few months. They might go dormant for a few months and come back. I like to use a bucket this big. That way I get a lot more roots so that they'll stay, a little more healthy, and they'll have a lot more room to grow. Your containers also don't have to necessarily be actual buckets or actual containers. In a sense, I'm growing this jalapeno in the inside of an old washing machine, in the spin dryer side. My dad kept this, and I've been using it to grow my jalapenos. And as you can see, I have actual jalapenos in this. That's that would have been trash. My dad just likes to keep all these things, and yeah, it's working, and it didn't cost me anything to use this container. So be creative, don't spend a lot of money. Regardless of which container you end up choosing, you want to make sure that you put drainage holes at the bottom of your container. If you don't have drainage holes, that water is going to settle, it's going to start building up, and it's going to rot the roots of your peppers, and that'll be really bad. It will kill your plant, and even worse than that is that you may not know that root rot is happening until probably 2-3 weeks after it's actually begun, and you're going to try to save it, and it's going to be impossible. Or at least I don't know any way of saving a plant where the roots have started to actually rot in the soil. So just prevent that from happening by making sure that you have good drainage holes in your containers. Now, on the topic of water being near the roots of your peppers, jalapenos are one of the most drought tolerant, and peppers in general are very drought tolerant plants. They can actually go without water for a pretty long period of time. They can survive on as little as watering 1 time per week. In Trinidad right now, we're in the month of July, which is the wet season, and I have not watered my jalapenos or any of my pepper plants since probably May. Right, that's just to tell you that we've had rain, and even when we don't have rain for almost a week, I still don't water them, because I know that they can go for quite a long period of time without actually getting water. Now, this might be a little bit different for your sweet peppers and your bell peppers. They rely a little bit more on water content, but for your hot peppers, they actually do like to suffer just a little bit. And if you have any doubt about what that would look like, take your index finger, just put your index finger maybe 2 knuckles down into the soil, and if you can't feel any kind of coolness, any kind of moisture, then maybe it's time to water those peppers. If you can't feel it, even if it's not wet, but you can feel some coolness 2 inches down, then more than likely your peppers are fine, and don't overwater them. Now, of course, having the correct type of soil is going to help you moderate how much water you actually have to put into your soil, because of course you want soil that is nice and well draining, can retain moisture, full of organic matter, and will allow you to not have to water very often at all, because it's going to hold on to that moisture. So let's go over and see what type of soil we're talking about, and we'll see how we can plant our peppers as well. So here we have my bucket with soil in it. I'm actually going to show you what I used to amend this soil. Remember guys, we're trying to replicate what would happen in a natural garden inside of a small container like this. So it's important that we put in all the different nutrients that would have naturally occurred in nature into this container here. So the first thing that I put in is some garden tone fertilizer. This has a small amount of NPK, right? Slow release, which is nice because that means it's going to feed my jalapenos over the course of the growing season, right? I don't put in that very much, just a little bit. right? In addition to having those nutrients, it also has very good beneficial bacteria and fungi that will help promote a good microorganism environment and culture inside of this container. That'll help me out because I don't have it naturally in here. Now remember, this is my homemade potted mix. If you want to see how I make it, just have a look at the link that I'm putting up, either my lettuce growing guide or my tomato growing guide in containers. I show you how I make this potted mix. The next thing that I put in would be some worm castings here, right? This is a very cheap resource. I get a gallon of this for $50, right? Worm castings are a really good source of nitrogen, right? So that will help with the growth of my jalapenos, right? That very early stage where they want to do a lot of leafy growth, it will help with that. Something else that I put in is some garden gypsum. This is a bit of a precaution. What it does is it adds calcium into my soil, and it's not going to immediately release. It's going to take some time, which is what I want, because these plants are not going to be ready for fruit until probably 2 months from now. So over that time, the calcium in the garden gypsum is going to break down, and that will help prevent something called blossom end rot, which can affect peppers just like they do tomatoes. I showed you that in my tomato growing guide, and it affects peppers as well. So you want to be very careful with calcium. Two things cause blossom end rot: either the lack of calcium or the lack of ability of a plant to take up calcium by not having enough water. Generally with peppers, you don't have that second issue. It's usually the first, right? That is not present in the soil. Okay, so something that I want you all to look at, right? These are seedling starts that I planted and I potted up into these small cups here, right? I'm going to show you what they actually look like. I potted these up maybe 3 days ago, right? And in just 3 days ago, you can see that the roots are already starting to form. I'm actually going to try to break this apart for you so you can see what I actually started off with, right? Just trying to be careful here. This is going to be fine, guys. You know, it's not recommended to disturb the roots so much, but just for the purposes of the video, I'm going to show you. Right, so this is more or less the plug that I bought. I do this more for my raised beds before putting peppers in my raised beds, because having this much root as opposed to having this little bit of root here, it gives my plant a lot better chance of surviving under the elements that you have in a raised bed, because in a raised bed, you know, it has to deal with whatever sun, whatever rain it gets. So this, I'm going to leave it for probably about a week again before I put it into my raised bed or even plant it into the ground. But this one, because it's a container, I can plant it just like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to baby this plant, meaning that if there's too much of rain, too much of wind, I'm going to actually move this container from the open air. I'll put it in some shade, and if there's too much of sun, maybe within the first week, I'll probably put this in a little bit of shade as well. That way I can baby this until it's strong enough and I can see enough development on it. It's mature enough to handle the raw elements. All right, so remember guys, this is soil that is, you know, nice and draining and also has good aeration. It can clump together and then fall apart like that. That's what we're looking for in our soil. You can see little worms actually in the soil. Okay, you probably can't. Yeah, that's a little guy there. Yeah, very, very beneficial. You want to see that in your soil. So just as with the cucumbers from last week, I talked to you all about not burying your plants, your seedlings, too deep. All right, you just want to cover that plug. Just make sure that it makes contact with the soil, right? And that's pretty much it. Okay, you don't want to bury it too deep because that will encourage root rot. So I pre-moistened the soil, so I don't need to give it any water right now. But if you didn't pre-moist your soil, you do want at this point here to give it a nice drink of water, and that is going to help the roots start sucking up that nutrients that is present in the soil and start growing for you in this container. Sunlight is a very crucial factor when it comes to peppers. Peppers need a minimum of 8 hours of sunlight to grow well. 12 hours of sunlight is really best in my opinion, even under the Trinidadian hot sun that is of course scorching and very, very brutal. Still, peppers like that extra heat. They do like to suffer with the watering, as I talked about, and even with the sunlight. They can handle a lot of sun. So make sure if you live in an apartment or you don't have access to maybe a patio or a yard, put them near to where you have sunlight, even if it's not in the same place. For instance, you get 4 hours of sunlight in the morning in one spot, and then in the afternoon you maybe need to move your containers to a different spot to get another 4 or 5 hours. Perfectly fine. That's why we grow in containers, because you actually have the freedom to do that. Now, of course, you want to make sure that your peppers are well fertilized and that the soil is nice and rich in all the important minerals for your peppers to grow. You can check out my video on the main nutrients that you find in soil and how you can get them into your soil. But want to think of your pepper plant almost as a child. At the very beginning, it's going to want to do a lot of growth, a lot of green leafy growth. You're going to need nitrogen for that growth. When it gets a certain size or a certain age, you're going to want to be pumping more of the phosphorus so that it can develop more roots and it can start to put on blossoms. Remember that the actual blossoms on your pepper plant are eventually going to, open up. They're going to get pollinated and they're going to close down, and they're going to give you a pepper in place of that flower. So getting the buds in the first place is very important to actually seeing peppers on your plants. And of course, potassium for that overall growth. And remember, a plant that is overall healthy is going to be able to resist disease and pests a lot better. Plants that are stressed, that are lacking in a certain nutrient, they're actually going to send out stress hormones that and pheromones that different insects can pick up on. They pick up on that scent and they actually hone in on the plant that is suffering, and they will attack a weaker plant. And now the last point is going to be on the topic of pruning. Now, whether you prune your peppers or you don't prune your peppers is up to you, and I think you should make that choice, and based on your own experiences you should come to a decision on whether you want to prune or not. I'm not going to tell you what I do because I don't want to influence you, because I know people who have been successful pruning and people who have been successful not pruning their peppers. I advise you, again, try both ways. See which one works for you, see which one you like. It could work for you, it could also not work for you, but at the end of the day, your own experience is going to be better than any advice you can find on the internet. And that's all there is to it. So get out there and start growing your own jalapenos at home. If you know someone who could benefit from this information, share this video with them so that they can grow more food for themselves and their family. Don't forget to check out the Instagram at the Trinidad Gardener channel. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave it below and I'll be happy to get back to you. This has been Dylan with the Trinidad Gardener channel, reminding you to get up and get growing.